Friends, I think we had more than enough for reflection, for our thinking, reflection, contemplation, for days together, months together, maybe some lives across. Truth is very simple, but it takes many lives to understand it, and again many lives to live it. So what is the $1 million question is, even if you understand the truth, you don't live it. Janami dharmam nachami prakriti, janami adharmam nachami nivriti. I know what is true, but I don't have that impulse to pursue it. I know what is untruth, what is bad, but I cannot restrain myself from pursuing it. This is a moral dilemma. It's a perennial, perpetual moral dilemma which every human agent faces. You'll all agree that today the talk by Professor Rai was so very heavy, at the same time so very light, so very clear, and at the same time so very abstruse. Abstruse things were made very simple, and perhaps in the short span of half an hour, 40 minutes, he has tried to present before us the quintessence of the Vedantic philosophy, the message of the Vedanta, as the title was pertinently, Vedanta through ages. Because the message of the Vedanta never gets diminished or diluted with the passage of time. It is always relevant for every people, every age it is relevant. And he says, he begins with the commonplace knowledge. You can say that there are 4 Vedas and each Veda has 4 parts, but he gives a novel interpretation of different parts of the Vedas. As students of philosophy, we understand that Samhitas were eulogies, invocations to deities and gods and goddesses, a pluralistic society, a society which ascribed godhood to Indra, to Chandra, to the sun, the moon, the earth god, sun god. There are 33 crores of gods and goddesses because Vedic people are polytheists. But he says that all these eulogies and incantations or invocations were expressions of devotion of the finite towards the infinite. It was not, though it was expressed in that mode that I am worshipping a sun or a moon or earth or water, but what was common to all these modes of worship is devotion, the surrender. All these prayers were expressions of devotion. That stands for devotion. Devotion is necessary but not enough. He says that if you are really devoted, it must manifest in form of action. We come to Brahmanas, which tell us how to, they talk of different rituals, but what is the rationale behind, what are the ideas behind? Means we must engage ourselves in action. There are some people who say that if you believe in God, will everything come? You become passive, inactive. No. One who believes in God cannot but love, cannot but act. So if there is a genuine devotion, then it will manifest in form of action, and Brahmanas represent action. Then he says that your whole life consists of devoted action. You have devotion, you have action. But at one point of time, you must, in his language, you must take leave. You must have moments of respite. You must give interest things to people, to the second generation, second line of in the lineage, the second, and try to find time to reflect upon how you lived, what you thought, how you lived, and how you acted. So there has to be reflection, cogitation on devotion, devotion and action. That is in Aranyaka, means go to the forest. Forest is symbolic. That means you need to have, you may be in the city or in the village, but you should have an exclusive space, time for yourself, where you transcend yourself and try to understand, in retrospect, what have you done, what have you achieved? Was it really a meaningful exercise? Then he says that then you get jnana. So you have devotion, bhakti, then you have karma, then you have jnana. And when you come to Upanishad part, really those knowledge or the knowledge that you acquired, that really crystallizes in form of a changed mode of living. And he says that Upanishad, so many senses, student of philosophy also, we didn't know that Upanishad means one is secret, rahasyam, another is, it is a knowledge which is imparted only to worthy few. Because in the Upanishads we talk of the disciples must be worthy, they must have adhikara. Everyone cannot be taught because it may be misused, misplaced. So it has to be given to those who are prepared to, in his language, they must be prepared to accept. Then only your teaching bears fruit. Otherwise, the seeds go waste. If you sow a fertile seed in the terrain, mountainous terrain, then it won't germinate, however viable it may be. It needs a proper soil, proper heat and soil, a congenial soil to germinate or sprout. Then he says, then he goes on to he discusses about Isopanishad, perhaps the first line, and so many commentaries and volumes have been written on it, but here he has presented before us the quintessence of the Isavasam. He says that yes, we control, and he says the train goes and the passengers sleep in the compartments, but because the driver, the controller is awake. The driver also is not free, he is being controlled by the station master. So by this analogy is said that whatever you think and whatever you do and whatever you feel, everything is controlled by one agent, is Isa. Isa means to control. And there is a supreme controller without whose approval, without whose will, even a blade of grass doesn't move. The wind does not blow and the river doesn't flow. So he talks of that supreme controller without which we cannot think, we cannot do, we cannot achieve, we cannot dream, we cannot aspire. And he says, and where is he? He says, he is not somewhere above, he is everywhere. He is present in every atom. Oh hidden life, as animation says, oh hidden life, vibrant in every atom, oh hidden life, shining in every creature. So this universal message, that presence of this consciousness, that supreme controller is present in everything, and he has given the analogy. Isavasya means it covers everything. So everything is clothed by that. That means it is within and it is also without. So he says, Isavasya Viddam Sarvam. Then he goes on to discuss about that when you see that everything is an expression of Brahman, then what about your approach to things, your transactions in life? He says that before anything comes, don't take it without examination, without scrutiny, without analysis, without understanding what it is. You was giving the example so nicely, picturesquely. You were giving the example of a fish which eats the bait. There are different kind of fish. There are some fish are intelligent enough to know that there is a trap, there is a hook, and there are some who nibble and go away, and there are some uncogitated kinds. They simply devour and they got caught and they have a miserable end. He said that whatever comes, you see a very good room, he said that you want to grab it. He said don't accept anything, whether it's eating or accepting or listening or whatever, before taking a book. You should understand how it is relevant for me. Otherwise, by trying to educate, you undo things which you have already done. That is, Bacon says there are some books which are to be chewed and there's some books that to be digested and all that. So he says that before we accept anything, you must accept with examination, critical scrutiny. Otherwise, it does more harm than good. Then he says, that is why, and he was very profusely quoting from Vivekananda and Mahatma Gandhi, he said that, then what should be our approach? He said, you might have earned everything, but you should always think, though you have earned it, it is not yours. You are a trustee, you are a custodian, you are a mere manager. And in Greek thought it is all said, it is God's store, let us partake of it. So everything, the bounties of nature, don't try to appropriate more than what you need. And you take only that which you deserve. So this kind of consensus thinking, the proper thinking has to go before you accept anything. And then he says that, okay, that then what is the nature of that controller? He comes to Kenopanishad, he said that it is that, because in Kenopanishad the answers, what is that Isa? Says that it is the consciousness which resides in all of us. By eyes you see, but if the consciousness is not there, even if you look, a dead man also keeps his eyes open, but the consciousness is absent, has passed away, you cannot see. So he is the eye of the eye, ear of the ear. There are 6-7 slokas which dilate upon this. And Upanishads say, how can you see that by which I see. You can, you see, it is as good as a camera can photograph anything beyond it. Can a camera photograph its own glass? No. Anything beyond the glass. Because the glass being there, photographs are taken. So consciousness being there, eyes can see. So how can it be seen? The means of representation, Wittgenstein calls it, the means of representation cannot be in the object of representation. I cannot be an object in the, you cannot see your own eyes, because eyes being there you see. Similarly, consciousness cannot be thought, cannot be spoken, cannot be seen. There are verses, and he was hinting at that. Then he said, what is that consciousness? What is that Jivatma? He said that Jivatma in everyone is same. Though they put on different clothes. He says, he gives the example of the waves, sea waves. The waves rise and fall in the sea. It appears prima facie that this is short wave, there are small waves, there are big waves. But all waves are nothing but different forms that the sea takes. So the sea waves rise and fall and they settle in the same bed of the sea. So it is the same sea. From one point of view, it is the same sea. So it is the same universal consciousness which appears in form of different things, beings and objects. And he says one thing. This is something. This Upanishadic philosophy maybe is known by few, but is lived by everyone. He says it is an official, to begin with he says, it is an official philosophy of India. If you go to a farmer, if you go to an unpaired, unlettered person in the village, you will find that he behaves. If you go there, if a guest comes, he treats you, Atiti Deva Bhava. Go and see. They are better hosts than the urban people. Because whenever a guest comes, we feel that is an interruption. Go to a village. Even a poor man, he will give all, he or she will treat you with as if a Lord has come. Acharya Deva Bhava, Atiti Deva Bhava, Pitru Deva Bhava, Matru Deva. These are the values which percolate down the generations. Even people who are not exposed to the modern education and the so-called civilization, they are in them. You find the values so live, so vibrant in them. So this sense of oneness. You know that Indian policy, political policy, India never, if Prime Minister decides to let us attack China, Indians will not accept. Because it is not in our psyche. So this Vedantic message that Professor Rai was talking about, it percolates into our individual psyche. Of course, sometimes even the best of steels also get rusted. So sometimes Indian minds also, youngsters also get, as I said, there is a revolution against truth. Previously there was a revolution against falsehood, now there is a revolution against it. So there is a decadence. But decadence, if you come to the cosmic time, decadence also is a part of the transitions, the changes, because everything is controlled by him. Sometimes you are healthy, sometimes you are sick. So the society also becomes sick, society also becomes healthy. So this is also, from cosmic point of view, as he has said, all changes are due to him. If there is a fall, if there is a decadence, a degeneration, maybe he has his own sense of timing, sense of well-being, sense of bringing society and making society disappear. So, and he says that, therefore, and he says that if you worship, you may worship anyone, but you should think that all these different forms of worship, whether it is Lord Jagannath or Tarini or Jesus or whomsoever worship, you are worshipping that singular principle in different forms. So there is no reason for dissension, confrontation or conflict, because we are worshipping the same consciousness, there is a universal, in his language, it is a universal worship. And he says, this is also supported by science, because science says all divisions are false and ultimately there is energy, with the only difference that Indians say that there is only consciousness. Because scientists here fail to explain the behavior of energy, because the energy flow in the universe also follows a discipline. That is why they say Shakti sa Sivasya Shakti. So unless the energy is controlled by a conscious principle, how does it behave so nicely? Even in an atom? The myriads of heavenly bodies, they hang on in space, they don't collide. So energy has to explain the discipline of energy. Shakti has a Shakti sa Sivasya Shakti means there must be consciousness as a variable. They are heading towards that. And he says that ultimately he concluded his talk by saying that the approach is Om. He says that there are 4 levels of consciousness underlined by the Upanishads. One is the state of waking. Now we are in the state of waking. We talk, listen, agree, disagree, refute and debate and controvert. And there is another, when the consciousness is suspended, we go to dream, swapna. Then when there is no dream but we sleep, it's called susupti, dreamless sleep. But beyond that, there is turiya. And he says that turiya is not the fourth stage, but it's the base of all these three levels of consciousness. When somebody sleeps, I is not absent, because after getting up we say, I slept so nicely. And how do you know that if you are not there in deep sleep, you are absent? There are no dreams, there is no consciousness. People come and go, you do not know. But nonetheless you are awake. Otherwise, how do you say after getting up from the sleep that I had a nice sleep? So that I is absent. His I is present all the while on to three stages. Now all the play of consciousness through three stages, presuppose turiya, that is the basal stage, the basic stage, the underlying stage, the base on which, just like a sea, the waves come and go, whether it's a dream state or a waking state, and different states of the waking state. And if there is only one thing in the beginning, in the middle, and in the end. So the message of Vedanta is one of unity, and socially speaking, sociologically, it encourages us, it prompts us to live a life of live and let live, love others. No one is as you were saying that the other day in Dhenkanal chapter, he says that Lord Krishna advised Arjuna to fight, but without anger, without animosity. So this is something to be cultivated. This is something to be assimilated, imbibed, and so that our action speaks for our ideology. So you will agree that such a profound and very scintillating talk, and Professor Rai gave, we are really obliged to him. But as per our system, we go for discussions, and I request our friends to kindly make the questions very pointed, so that Professor Rai will answer it.
Sir, sir, you said that examine everything before you accept it. And you also again said that Lord controls everything. And if Lord controls everything, then my examining does not depend on me. If Lord controls everything, then my examining doesn't depend on me, because it is controlled by Him. Then how can I examine a particular thing?
And the idea is like this. Are you in a state, anybody, you means anybody, is anybody in a state who has realized that Lord is controlling everything? Or in one part he says that Lord is controlling everything, in the other part I am controlling everything, then government is controlling everything, then you are controlling everything. That way you must distinguish. Once it is firmly established in you, firmly, that Lord is controlling everything, you need not discriminate. Because every discrimination will be false. That will come to the theory of Maya. We have not gone to it. Because on the day every is following everything will not be good. We have only reached there is a first and fundamental principle, which is consciousness, and that is universal consciousness, and that is controlling everything. Once anybody is firmly established, Punah Pratishtita, Purnam Pratishtita, not that wavering, then you need not examine anything, nor does anything there to be examined. He himself will pick up and give it. Because Ramakrishna Paramahansa never examined many things. Never. But Vivekananda said, you must examine. Why? Because in what state Ramakrishna Paramahansa was all the time, that is not ordinarily available. And if we develop ourselves to that level, then naturally discriminating will come by itself.
If Lord controls everything, then how can I discriminate? If Lord controls everything, how can a person discriminate?
Now we must come to the consciousness fully that Lord alone controls. But sometimes we think that I am controlling, sometimes we think government is controlling, something central principles are controlling. So all this must vanish. We must establish ourselves, establish pratishtitam in the view that the Lord controls them. Then no discrimination necessary.
Sir, one thing. When you are talking about we ascribe all our activities to God, in that case we abandon the concept of free will. So there must be some free will. The concept we have to accept. Because as you say that God alone as a pure soul exists, abides. That is fine. But when I exist as myself, as a being, so in that case I have my free will. Supposing I go by train, so I am munching chanachu this and that. So that is my free will exercising. But if I abandon this concept of free will, perhaps we will miss the point.
This is a point raised seriously in the Western philosophy.
That's true, that's what I'm asking.
In the Western philosophy, free will and divine control, they have been found to be opposed.
Exactly.
But our point is, have free will. As much free will you can have only while climbing. And when you have climbed up the hill, whether you have a free will, not a free will, it will be immaterial.
No, correct how it's okay, fine. But unless we accept this free will, perhaps I can live. I can live in for a moment.
For climbing up the hill, you will have free will.
Can I respond to you?
Yes.
So I think when you have free will, you know, there is one thinker, Hegel must have been, he says, freedom is obedience. You are really free, there are Marx also, you are really free when you obey the state. Let me dwell upon it. Similarly, in this Indian perspective, if you have a will of your own, forgetting that there is a controller, then that will, you will recoil and you will fall into greater and greater bondages. Your will be progressively restricted. If will means licentiousness, if will means freedom to do whatever you feel like, maybe that supposing without any cogitation you take free will, you take munch this mixture, maybe that you end up with loose motion. So the point is, the idea is that when you merge your will in the cosmic will, then whatever you will be for your good and will be good for the Lokasangra, for the collective well-being. So the will is really free. Will run into bondage if it is diverse from the cosmic will. When it merges in the cosmic will, then will really yields dividend. You are really free when you act according to his will. But we have to ascertain what is the cosmic will. That is why Bhagavad Gita says.
I just don't do anything thinking about God. Perhaps supposing I am doing a murder, I am committing a murder somewhere. I am not thinking in terms of the divinity. I am doing something out of my own will because I just want to avenge. So when I want to avenge, I am not thinking in terms of divinity.
Yeah.
That is true. So let's not impose this sociological factor with the divine spiritualness.
Sir, what I am submitting is this, that you are free to murder.
I am free to murder. I am free to rape. I am free to do anything I like. But I am not thinking in terms of divinities because once I think, perhaps I will not do it.
You are simply saying that many of our actions we do forgetting the truth, but we pay price for it. Suppose you go to the jail, your children also go without education and everything. So gradually, maybe not one life, several lives, through class and cohesion, you are free to. But all the roads lead to the same goal. If you commit evil, you pay price for it, and you realize that it is evil. Then you understand what is good. Then that prompts you to the path of good. Then you realize it doesn't happen one day. You are free to commit mistakes, all rapes and murders and everything, black money and everything you do. But you black money, your son also goes astray. You also enter into jail in disproportionate wealth. So gradually what happens is, when you tread the path of falsehood, you suffer, pay price for it. Gradually there is awakening. So what happens is, and at one point of time, you say that yes, really, I should not have done.
Repentance comes later.
So,
Suppose
it doesn't come one day.
thinking in terms of, there is a sentence pattern. Cast the burden upon the Lord and sustain me. I do something wrong and I cast all the burdens upon the Lord, thinking that Lord will sustain me. But that is not the thing, because I am not doing anything where I am not associating the result with my action.
Actually, God is not
I am not thinking about that time, because free will is that.
You are existentially
Free will
you see,
is devoid of God's presence.
No, actually, evildoer.
କଥା ହେଲା Vedantic conception realize God, have contact with Him. And then you shall see how He is controlling you.
That's surrender.
ମୁଁ ସରେଣ୍ଡର ନାମ ଧରିନି ସେ ଧରିଛି ଆପଣ ମୋତେ ସରେଣ୍ଡର ମୋର କଥା ହେଲା ଆପଣ ଲର୍ଡଙ୍କ ସାଙ୍ଗରେ ସମ୍ପର୍କ ସ୍ଥାପନ କରନ୍ତୁ ୱାନ୍ସ ସମ୍ପର୍କ ସ୍ଥାପନ ହେଇଗଲେ ଆପଣଙ୍କୁ ପ୍ରତି ଷ୍ଟେଜରେ ଇନଷ୍ଟ୍ରକ୍ସନ ମିଳିବ ଏହା କର ଏହା ନ କର ଏହା କର ଏହା ନ କର ରାମକୃଷ୍ଣ ପରମହଂସ ଆସିବା ପରେ ମୁଁ ଏଇଟା ଠିକ ତ ନିଶ୍ଚୟ ବହୁବାର କହିଛି ଏଇଟା ମୁଁ ବରାବର ଲେଖିଛି କ୍ୟାନ୍ ୟୁ ଟକ୍ ୱିଥ୍ ଗଡ୍ ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ଏ ହଲରେ ପଚରାଯିବ କ୍ୟାନ୍ ୟୁ ଟକ୍ ୱିଥ୍ ଗଡ୍ ମୋଷ୍ଟ ଅଫ୍ ଦି ପିପଲ୍ସ ଆର୍ ଡାଉଟଫୁଲ we cannot talk with God. Start talking with God and report the matter to me after 15 days.
That also we cannot show
We
you.
can establish a community.
ଶୁଣନ୍ତୁ ବାଟ ଅଛି ନା ଏମିତି ହେଲା ଓ ଗଡ୍ I want to talk with you. Oh God, I want to talk with you. କିଛି ଆସିବନି ଆପଣ ରାମକୃଷ୍ଣ ପରମହଂସଙ୍କ ସାଙ୍ଗରେ କଥାବାର୍ତ୍ତା କରୁଥିଲେ ନା ମୋର କ'ଣ ଏମିତି ହେଇଗଲା ଯେ ଆପଣ ମୋ ସାଙ୍ଗେ କଥାବାର୍ତ୍ତା ହେଉନାହାନ୍ତି ହୃଦୟାନନ୍ଦରେ କାଲି ଆସିଥିଲେ ସେ ମୋତେ କହିଛନ୍ତି ମୁଁ ବାରମ୍ବାର ପଚାରିବି ଗଡ୍ ଟକ୍ ୱିଥ୍ ମି ଆପଣ କନସିଷ୍ଟେଣ୍ଟଲି ଚଲାନ୍ତୁ 5 ଦିନ ପରେ ଶୁଭ ହ୍ୱାଟ୍ ଡୁ ୱାଣ୍ଟ ହ୍ୱାଟ୍ ଡୁ ୟୁ ୱାଣ୍ଟ ମୋ ସାଙ୍ଗରେ ସମ୍ପର୍କ ରଖିଲେ ତୋର କ'ଣ ଲାଭ ନା ଆଜ୍ଞା ମୁଁ ବାଟ ପାଉନି ଅନ୍ଧାରରେ ତୁ ସେ ବାଟରେ ଯିବୁନି ଯଦି ନ ଆସିବ psychologists are saying it is coming from a higher self and exactly Vedanta says it comes from a higher self. He is not a God sitting anywhere. No, he is your higher self.
Conscience.
This self, no, not even conscience. Higher self. There is a lower self, ego. The higher self, God. You establish contact and see after Ramakrishna Paramahansa, anybody can establish contact with God. Suppose you can say, hey भगवान ଆପଣ ଅଛନ୍ତି କି ନାହିଁ ମୁଁ ଜାଣିନି ମୋତେ ଗୋଟେ ମିଛରେ ଗୋଟେ ହୃଦାନ୍ଦରେ ଶିଖେଇ ଦେଇ ଯାଇଛି ଯେ ମୁଁ ଗୋଟେ ଆପଣଙ୍କ ସାଙ୍ଗେ କଣ୍ଟାକ୍ଟ କରିପାରିବି କିଛି ସୁଯୋଗ ନାହିଁ ମୁଁ ଗୋଟେ ଆପଣ କଣ୍ଟାକ୍ଟ କରିବି ବୋଲି କହୁଥିଲି ଆପଣ ଥାଆନ୍ତୁ କି ନଥାନ୍ତୁ ମୋର ଯାଏ ଆସେ କ'ଣ ଟେକ୍ ଇଟ୍ ଦ୍ୟାଟ୍ ୱେ ମୁଁ କ'ଣ କଣ୍ଟାକ୍ଟ ନା ମୋ ପୁଅ ବାହାଘର ହବ କି ନାହିଁ ଆରେ ତୋ ପୁଅ ବାହାଘର ହେଇସାରିଲାଣି ଯଦି ବାହାହେଇକି ରହିଲାଣି ତୁ ସେ ଚିନ୍ତା କରନା ଆପଣ ଦେଖିବେ ଆପଣ କୁତକୁତ ହିଁ ହସୁଥିବେ ଏବଂ ଖବର ଗୁଡ଼ାକ ଆପଣଙ୍କ ପସ୍ତ 15 दिन କରନ୍ତୁ ଆଚ୍ଛା ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ ବାଟ ଦେଖନ୍ତୁ ଲର୍ଡ ଆପଣ କହିବେ ଲର୍ଡ କେହି ନାହିଁ ମ ସେ ଆପଣଙ୍କ ହାୟର ସେଲ୍ଫଟା ଯୋଉଟା ଲୋଅର ସେଲ୍ଫ କହୁଛି ହାୟର ସେଲ୍ଫକୁ ଆପଣ କିଛି କହୁନା ଲର୍ଡ ମୋତେ ଲାଗୁଛି ମୁଁ ଆପଣଙ୍କ ସାଙ୍ଗରେ ଭଲ ସମ୍ପର୍କରେ ଅଛି ଲଡୁ ଖାଇବେ କି ଆପଣ ପଚାରିବେ ନା
Diabetes ହଉଛି।
ଲର୍ଡ ଲର୍ଡକୁ ଲର୍ଡକୁ ଡାଇବେଟିସ୍ କହିବେ ଲର୍ଡ ଆଜ୍ଞା ଲଡୁ ଖାଇବେ ଲଡୁ ନ ଖାଇଲେ ଆମ୍ବ ଖାଇବେନି ଚକୋଲେଟ୍ ଖାଇବେ ଆପଣ ଖାଆନ୍ତୁ କିଛି ଖବର ଆସିବନି ହଠାତ୍ ଦିନ ଆପଣ ଖବର ଆସିବ କହିଥିଲୁ ଆମ୍ବ ଦେବ ବୋଲି ଦେଲି ଗୋଟେ ଆମ୍ବ ଆପଣ ଦେଖିବେ ଯେ ଆମ୍ବ କୋଉଠି ନାହିଁ ଦେଖିବେ ଆଶ୍ଚର୍ଯ୍ୟ କଥା ଯେ ଆପଣଙ୍କ ଗଛରେ ଗୋଟେ ଆମ୍ବ ଅଛି ଏହା ନ ଘଟିବା ପର୍ଯ୍ୟନ୍ତ ଈଶ୍ୱର ଅଛନ୍ତି କି ନାହିଁ ସେ କୁଆଡ଼କୁ ଅନେଇଛନ୍ତି କ'ଣ କରୁଛନ୍ତି ଦିସ୍ ଡିସ୍କସନ୍ କରିପାରିବେନି ହ୍ୟାଭ୍ କଣ୍ଟାକ୍ଟ ୱିଥ୍ ଗଡ୍ ଏବଂ ଗଡ୍ ଆଉ କୋଉଠି ନାହାନ୍ତି ସର୍ବ ଏଇଠି ଅଛନ୍ତି ଏଇଠି ଏ ଗଡ୍ କ'ଣ କଥାବାର୍ତ୍ତା କରୁନୁ ଆମର ଏମିତି ବହିଛ ଚୁପଚାପ ଗୋଟେ କଥା ଆଉ ତୁମର କ'ଣ ଲୁହା ହେଇଛ ଆଡ଼େ ଗଡ୍ ହେଇଛ ନା ମୁଁ ପୁରା ଇନ୍ଦ୍ର ହେଇଥିଲି 3 ଲେୟାରରେ ସେମିତି ମୁଁ ଏଇଟା ଲୁହା ହେଇଛି ମୁଁ ଗଡ୍ ହେଇଛି ସତେ କହିଲେ କ'ଣ ଖାଉଛ ଏଗୁଡ଼ାକ ପଦାରେ କହିବା କଥା ନୁହଁ ଯିଏ ବିଶ୍ୱାସ କରି କରିବ ମୋର ଗୋଟେ ଫର୍ମୁଲା ଅଛି ଯିଏ କହିବ ଈଶ୍ୱର ଅଛନ୍ତି ତାର ଈଶ୍ୱର ଅଛନ୍ତି ଯିଏ କହିବ ଈଶ୍ୱର ନାହାନ୍ତି ତାର ଈଶ୍ୱର ନାହାନ୍ତି ଏବଂ ଯିଏ କହିବ ଈଶ୍ୱର ଅଛନ୍ତି କି ନାହିଁ ଡାଉଟଫୁଲ ତା ପାଇଁ ଈଶ୍ୱର ଅଛନ୍ତି କି ନାହିଁ ଡାଉଟଫୁଲ ଏ ଫର୍ମୁଲାଟା ମନେ ରଖିଥାନ୍ତି ତାପରେ ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ ଛୋଟିଆ କଥା କହି ଏଣ୍ଡ କରୁଛି ରାମକୃଷ୍ଣ ପରମହଂସ କହିଛନ୍ତି ଗୋଟେ ଲୋକ ରାସ୍ତାରେ ଯାଉଥିଲା ଭାରି ଖରାପ ଅଛି କ'ଣ ଗୋଟେ ଦେଶ ହେଇଛି ଗୋଟେ ଗଛ ନାହିଁ ହଠାତ୍ ଗଲା ଗଛଟି ଆଗରେ ଅଛି ଏଇ ଗଛଟା ଅଛି ମୁଁ ଦେଖିନଥିଲି ଆଗରୁ ସେ ଗଛ ମୂଳେ ବସିଲି କହିଲା ଏଇ ଗଛ ମୂଳେ ବସିଲି ସବୁ ହେଲା ଆଉ ଟିକେ ପାଣି ପିଇବାକୁ ମିଳନ୍ତା ନାହିଁ ଫାର୍ଷ୍ଟ କ୍ଲାସ୍ ସରବତ ଆସିଗଲା ତ ପିଇଲା ଆରେ ବା ତାହେଲେ ଖାଇବାକୁ ମିଳିପାରେ सुंदर डिश आसी पहुँचला ताकू भी खाइला चलो गोटे खट पड़ते टे शोई था भल भल था कहीं उठिकी जी खट पड़गला शोला मुझे शोई बाघ जब मत खाए बाघ आसला खाए जादृशी भावना जस्य सिद्धिर्भवति तादृशी लिखी जादृशी भावना जस्य सिद्धिर्भवति तादृशी पांचु थाए जा काले प्राप्त हुए ता आपण जाको निजर स्त्री बोली कहउछंती आपण जाको आपण पुओ बोली कहउछंती आपण जाको आपण शत्रु बोली कहउछंती ता छडा ए माने केही नहंती म बहु बार आगु बुझेछि क्लियरली जे जनकर स्त्री जनको बाटौछि से कौन भाबो मस्तित्व बाटौछि सेटा दुष्टा नारी हट नारायण तम पिठी रे छेचिबा माई सही रूप होई रे बाबा गोटे छोटे घटना जने लोक जाए एमती सभा समिति अटेंड डेली आस हठात तार मन पड़ा अरे स्त्री कही परिवा आने मु आने कौन करी स्त्री जेते सी नारायण अच्छा मुझे नारायण को कहली आज्ञा मु आपण कथा शुणु शुणु से होटेल रे बसी गली आ मु परिवा आनी नै आज माड निश्चय अछि मो भाग्य केते आ लोक नाहती सांचुनी उठा निश्चय बसिबो ये सब में पहुंच गले आज्ञा ताके स्त्री कहले आज्ञा मु टिके आपण कथा शुणु शुणु बसी गली ता स्त्री बोले मुंड खराब हिची अरे बस्त गला मते खाओ मागे दरकार कोन ये प्रकार सुविधा अछि आ गोटे सुविधा सुन जने साधु एटा साधु का जीवन का बढ़िया कहो बायोग्राफी ऑफ द सेंट्स ऑफ इंडिया एंड आल्सो वर्ल्ड एवरीबॉडी देखियो कम देसी से जाइतले आसिरा को खंडिया आखु पाई आखुटा नै हम तो दी जन या खंडिया आखु को हम दी जन खाइबो कि जाई पहुंचल ना स्त्री अनेक क्यों बाजार में जाइतल कोन आनिल हरि कथा ना देखे से ना पिटला दा बिठरे दी फड़ाई फटिया मु तो जान ना दिली के लिखो ना बोली शास्त्री लव में द एंड लास्ट अब्राहम लिंकन एटा सब पढ़ियो अब्राहम लिंकन